Pledge allegiance to the
to the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We need a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved.
Second,
Second, Dallas.
any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, Dallas.
We don't have-
No public comments.
Okay, the first, discussion is on the public comment policy. Each of you have a copy of that?
It's in Word docs. I'm trying to bring it back up.
I think we do. I looked at the paperwork that was in Diligent. I'm pulling it back up now.
Okay,
My computer went down, so I'm coming back up again.
Yeah, it's not, the R policy is not in there, but I just looked at the AR.
I didn't put the policy in there. I just put the JOT form in there. Did you want the policy?
Oh, we're in the JOT form. I was thinking we were on the next thing. Yeah, I saw the JOT form. Yes.
Yes, that's what we're talking about. It's not the policy itself, but the JOT form and what we're going to do with
Public
if you're going
comments.
for the weekend, exactly.
Yeah, no, I just didn't have my computer up either, Robin. So I'm on task now.
But that's all right. Can you all see the form?
Yes.
Okay,
okay.
all right, sorry.
Oh, is anything that I think, Tina had talked about the, how do we enforce this to the point where, you know, when someone don't adhere to the policy, so any suggestion?
How do we enforce the policy of using the JOT form?
Well, I think the first thing in that form, not the policy, the other side, is to do it
Yeah,
the job form is to use it electronically.
yeah,
So to figure out those who are not in person or how if they use the form, when they get to use it, how long it stays up, when it comes down, and so
Right.
forth.
Gotcha.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think we've talked about this. Sorry, I'm getting feedback. Can you guys hear that?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked about before, I know looking at other school boards, policies, I had recommended 24 hours in advance. So open it up on, if we have our meetings on Tuesday, we open it up Monday. That's what a lot of school districts have done. The other thing is we had decided not to put in our policy that we would, or did we decide? I don't think we decided to put first come, first serve type of thing, right? We had talked about it.
Right, we did not.
Right. So that would be my recommendation is 24 hours before, open up, send out the JOT form or open up that, however we're setting it up on the web. I'm assuming on the website.
Yes,
Yeah. So we could just open it 24 hours in advance and close it, 30 minutes before. Now, do we, because we often have people, actually, I have seen people filling out public comment cards while other public comments, after that we've already started public comments. Do we have a cutoff time for public comments?
no,
No,
Okay. I would suggest we might talk about that too.
that's something that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of places do. And the problem is you don't want people sitting there that hear something and these are, I think that we need to think about public comments in the sense of the worst case scenarios. And I can think of two that have been, extreme examples of public comments. The masking debate and was probably the most extreme. And then the book issue, right? So this is not an everyday thing, but what you would hate to see if we had another issue like that, where we have 75 people that show up and want to speak, that people start signing up to respond to other public commenters. So I think it would be a good idea to at least have it cut off that once public comments have started, you know, you're going to have to wait till public comments number 2.
Okay. Mr. Dallas, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess my overall comment is the process that we have now appears to be working. Of course, we're not challenged with the massive signups that we had during the height of the book challenges. But it seems that some of the political changes, such as coming from the State Board of Education, have bled off a lot of the energy that used to be directed towards the district. And I just want to ensure that we are able to execute with fidelity to whatever the policy is. And we seem to be doing that mostly now. I agree with cutting off the comments for the first period so that a person can all of a sudden just send one in.
Right.
So I think Ms. Boatwright's point about cutting it off 30 minutes before or whatever time she said is a good one, but I'm sort of leaning towards retaining as is for the rest of the policy.
I have a question, well, not a question. When you say turn it off on the website, Molly said we can't turn it off on the website. So do you mean
You can
just not pull any more off, or what do you mean?
now, my experience with Jot forms, and I don't do a ton with Jot forms, but I've done other form input, and so Molly maybe can clarify. You can turn accepting responses on and off. So, you know, at 24 hours in advance, you would toggle that over and it would say this form is now accepting responses. And then my recommendation, but based on just sort of starting the discussion, would be to turn it off at a minimum once public comments have started. Then you would say no longer accepting responses. Is that your experience, Molly?
Are you talking about, is it like you set an automatic time on it and it's automatic, or we have to do that manually every single time?
Well, I think that the 24 hours you could do automatically. You know, you could even do it when you post the agenda or something like that, but turning it off if you chose to do it when public comments started, because we don't have a set time for public comments to start. Ideally, I mean, we have a general sense, but they don't start at 6:15 every day. They start when we get to that part of the agenda. So let's say that we come out of executive session and there's a bunch of unexpected additional conversation, you know, then sometimes you could have public comments starting later than normal. So I think that if you're going to cut them off and stop accepting responses, you would do that manually.
Right now on our agenda, we give them the hour, and I would recommend, since it's a one person or might even two, depending, that we keep them within a time frame. So if it's 24 hours, it's fine, but it stops within. Not being able to sit there and turn something off in the middle of the meeting or during public comments is too cumbersome. There's too much going on. And right now on our agenda, we say you respond between this time and this time.
Mm-hmm.
And
if that's the case, then just say cut it off at 6, you know?
Yes, or yeah.
So would it not be toggling it off, but it'll be timed, like the responses come through our email, and those are time stamped. So is it just not necessarily toggling it on and off, but leaving it open, and I guess just rejecting those requests that come in after that time?
I mean, let me check. I don't know Jot form well enough. If you guys give me a minute, I can check.
Still trying to do the first, whoever comes in, like, if they come in by email as well as people who are here in person, how, you know, yes, it's timestamped through the email, but it could be the same, you know.
Well, I thought how you were doing it now is sometimes if they're after that,
If
that
they
cutoff time, you just don't accept that request.
Right.
The request actually still comes in. You still have, I guess, a record of them.
Right.
Okay, so
But-
Molly, there is a form availability option in Jot form. And all you do is you would set the time like a timer. So you could say 6 p.m. Monday, it opens, the form's available. At 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the form is not available. And that would be automated behind the scenes.
Okay, I'll look into that.
So does that answer the question? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. May I speak?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I guess the question I'm looking at is the administrative side. 24 hours is an extraordinarily long period of time for me. I think the people who are going to present are going to know. I would suggest 12 hours before, so that they have that time to prepare it and get it in. And I also like the idea of actually cutting it off. I wouldn't cut it off right at when the meeting starts. If we're starting at 6, I probably will cut it off at 5, so that the administrative staff is not trying to do 2 things, manage the meeting and also manage the inflow. And I think segmenting it and then following what Ms. Boatwright mentioned earlier about, if they don't have it in, I think that was Ms. Mercado. If they don't have it in, they just don't have it in. And they roll it over to the second period.
Yeah, so this is one of these questions where it's like with technologies, does the technology drive the policy or does the policy drive the technology, right? So if we were to decide a policy that this is how we want it, then we would just have to figure out how to build the technology to accomplish that. But taking feedback from Robin that it would be better to have it timed, and I think it sounds like you agree with that, Mr. Dallas.
Yes,
then
ma'am.
the technology can be set up to do whatever. I would push back on the 12 hours because as a parent and a full-time, worker, a lot of times I do my stuff in the evening. During the day, you can get sucked. You can be like, oh, I got to sign up for that form. And then you're, really busy at work or you've got kids at home and all of a sudden 5 o'clock. And if that's the time we cut off, I would like to be able to do it because that is I think for people who work or have kids, it's the evening's a good time to catch up on that sort of stuff. So I would prefer to see 24 hours. I mean, it's certainly up for discussion. And then I think the other part is whatever we decide to do electronically should be mimicked on the other side, right? Like, I don't think we should have electronic communication cut off at 5 and people still turning in comment cards in person, while public comments are going on. So I think whatever we decide, in my opinion, it should be the same for both methods.
So, process question, so those people who are coming in person, then they would have to have signed up electronically.
They don't have to. I mean, obviously, and I think I said this at the policy meeting, I think we should, we could just, but people are like, absolutely not. So that's fair enough. I just think that if we're going to put time limits.
But I guess I'm trying to figure out, so if we're mimicking it, then people who come in person, they can't get inside until 6 o'clock. They can't get into the meeting until 6. So they would have to sign up when they come in at 6 or not be able to sign up at all. If we're going to turn it off at 6 for the electronic people.
So can I weigh in?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
So, I'm willing to defer to Ms. Boatwright on the 24 hours about her point, giving families that, working and traveling and what have you. But I don't think the people who show up, since they're actually physically investing in coming, I want them to be able to provide their input through whatever process is least taxing on the administrative staff. So is that what we currently do? And is that feasible? So we would have 24-hour prior to a cutoff, for those who have the technology and the access and are working to help them with their family situation. I'm fine with that. But I don't want to penalize those who are actually physically showing up because they may not have that technological prowess to do that. So I want to give them the benefit of the doubt.
So, Ms. Boatwright?
Yeah. Did you want me to respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think this is actually an interesting discussion. I don't have I just have ideas, so I don't want to be in any way perceived as being argumentative or so technocratic. But one of my things is, and I've been talking as I've been doing, I'm up for reelection. And so I've had a few conversations and a few candidate type forums. And, when they ask me if I have questions, I say, what can we do to get the community involved, right? And I think that what you see at public comments a lot of times in our current process is people with a real passionate issue, right? Whether it's the book bans or the masking or the Beaufort Eagle, people that are really, really motivated by a very specific issue. That's one group. Then another group we have are people who are retired, who are older, who Mr. Miller is a great example of someone who is really passionate about an issue and comes to our meetings and contributes to all of our meetings. And I think that's fantastic. The third group we're not hearing a whole lot from, which are, we rarely hear from parents who come up and bring, a concern or a suggestion or a comment. You rarely hear from the business community who might come. And I think part of that is because it is daunting. Again, the district office is not, even if we have it in Hilton Head, that's not real convenient for obviously people north of Broad or even in Bluffton, May River area. So we're a geographically challenged district. We're spread out. It is faster for me to go to Savannah than Whale Branch. So we're acknowledging that. And then, people have different pressures on them. I feel like we have been sort of providing a disservice to that group. And that's a group we should be hearing from. And so the problem is if you say, well, the people that show up get extra credit, that I'm not sure that that's as benign a statement as it sounds. I think that there is something that, most people, and I work with a lot of older people, and my job is to try and cram as much technology on them as I can with, varying degrees of success. But most people can manage a simple sign-on online. I think we need accommodations for those who do strongly feel like they really want that handwritten note. But the advantages of doing it online is also the fact that you can read their handwriting, right? If they have something, well, a lot of times Tina has struggled to read the handwriting. It's clear for them to understand what's happening. So I would say, I don't know if we should, and I think this is a discussion that the board would want to have, really say that we should have two different standards for in-person, because I don't necessarily think coming in person is a measure of the interest you have in the topic.
So can I add on to what Ms. Boatwright's saying?
That's right.
I think the people who actually get up and come are the more passionate ones, not just the most convenient ones. When the book ban issue was going, it spread countywide. Yes, there was a center of gravity that was the first adopters, but that book ban process was very active along the 278 corridor, because the 278 corridor is the basically ground zero for helping move forward on changing the whole book ban apparatus review apparatus, and they got it passed. So I think, again, I'm just looking at how do we keep it efficient for the execution of the meeting while the meeting is in progress, and so that both groups can have that access. So I actually, again, I defer to Ms. Boatwright on the 24 hours. I think that's a good change. I still would have signups available for those who actually show up. Thank you.
Okay. So, Ms. Boatwright, you want to send all those notes to Mrs. Cushenberry, and then
I think if you're looking at the job form that we have now, does that take care of the sign up, and if it's timed stuff, do you think this would work if we turn it on 24 hours?
If you are asking, I have one question about the current job form. If you scroll to the bottom, is our guideline currently that they can raise one topic? Because the last section has multiple topics. and I could see some very mischievous people lining up 2 or 3 topics. There's still the 3-minute constraint, but I could see there still being some discomfort with them not being able to talk about all 3 of their topics since they were cutting them off. So I would suggest 1 topic per entry.
One topic per entry?
Okay,
I
Yes,
would
ma'am.
agree with that.
that's good.
I would
Um,
put a note on there that if you have multiple topics, you must submit a form for each topic. I don't think, I mean, I agree that I think if we make it super easy for them, we will have people that will sign up to talk about 3 things, or, there's always gonna be people gaming the system, right? So say 1 topic per, and then if you want to say, look, if you have 2 things you want to talk about, you got to sign up for another.
So also on the form, should we put, well, never mind, I answered my own question. Because if they put the topic on there, we'll know if it is on the agenda or if it's not, so never mind.
Right.
And the other thing that I like Molly has starred the ones, which I'm assuming are those, that's what will be required. So people aren't required to fill out their address if they don't want to, but they are required to put their phone number and email. Is that right, Molly?
Yes.
I think another optional question that would just my data brain goes is to say, give them a selection and say, are you a parent? Are you a, I don't know. It'd be nice to know.
Community member, staff,
Yeah.
parent, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Robin, you would know the categories. It'd just be great, like a year from now, to pull a report and see, what percentage of our public comments are coming from students, what percentage are coming from parents. I think that would be useful to look at how we are engaging with our greater community. But that's just, I would make it optional.
I totally agree with that. Ms. Cushingberry.
Yes, sir.
I'm sort of leaning that maybe reinforcing that the topics to be discussed have to be on the agenda. So if it's not, an additional extra bit of work, they just have to read it. I would suggest that might be worthwhile to avoid some controversy.
Well, in the policy, so on it, it tells you that during the first period, it has to be on the agenda. And then the second public comments is for anything that you want to talk.
It's the first one.
It's so on the first, in the rule, so under public comment periods, in the rules, it says that it has to be on topic during the first period.
And the rules would be a part of the form? So they
Yes,
would see, okay, then
Yes.
then maybe would you be willing to consider adding a refer to rule 2? Or is that overkill? And if you feel like it's overkill, I'm happy to go with that.
No, I mean, no, it's not overkill. It's whatever, that's fine.
Ms. Boatwright, Mr. Campbell, again, I can go either way.
Whatever is best for Robin and her group.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
We shouldn't,
I mean, that doesn't affect us one way or another.
okay.
So,
You could bold or highlight it if you don't think it stands out enough.
bold
works.
it and underline it or whatever.
That works fine. Solution concluded. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to use that now. Solution concluded. The end.
Anything else on this?
So do we need to take this, unanimous, we'll take the changes that you suggest and take it to the board for the, October 15th meeting? Is that fine?
I'm not going to be at the October 15th meeting, but so I guess I can't argue my case. Maybe I could submit something.
Argue your case. So we're putting it at 24 hours.
Yep.
So what other changes?
When it gets turned off. And
Thought it was get turned off 24 hours. No?
well, that's what I'm saying. So basically 6 to 6 is what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm gonna say from 5 to 5. Is that okay?
That works for me.
That would be my point that I would discuss. But I mean, yeah, we can put 5 to 5. whatever you guys want to put.
And the only reason why I say 5 to 5 is if it's turned on at 5 p.m. on Monday, they have till 5 p.m. And currently what we have on our agenda is like 30 minutes before the meeting starts. So I can say from 5:30 to 5:30.
And what is it, is the public comment period, I was trying to find it on here quickly. What, do we have a cutoff time for in-person or can people sign up?
No. They can sign up, it's not in policy, so if you want them to stop signing up when public comment starts or.
Well, that's probably outside the agenda item for this one, but I think it's something that
It's
we.
public comments, it's still talking about public comments.
Okay. Do either the gentlemen want to entertain a discussion about cutting off public comments at a certain time if you're in person, or do we want to continue to allow them to sign up until public comments are over, essentially?
So just so I'm clear, this really applies to the second public comment session, is that correct?
It
Well, we
applies
do-
to both, it applies to both.
We have a lot of people that do come in and sign up and drop off sign up sheets and I would think that would be an administrative challenge, but I don't know, that they're turning in their slips while public comments are going on.
Right.
Is that something that the administrative staff you feel you want to do?
I would personally prefer that once public comments start, that they would not be allowed to sign up anymore.
Then I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I think once public comments start, then that should be the end and they can sign up for the second public comments. And after the second public comment starts, then they would not be allowed to sign up.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
fine. 100% here.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Anything else?
Not here.
So that's a unanimous kind of change that we can take to the board.
Yep, 5:30 to 5:30, and also discussion of ending public comments in person once the public comment period has started. That's what I have
Yes.
written down. Okay.
I'm fine with it.
So I'm gonna say that is Ingrid's motion, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I'll second that. If a second is needed.
Yeah. Hours. We say 5 to 5 or 5:30 to 5:30, did it
I
matter?
like 5:30 to 5:30.
Okay,
That's what you recommended, Ms. Cushionberry.
all right.
5:30,
Motion to have
5:30.
electronic public comments open 24 hours from 5:30 to 5:30. And in-person public comments not received after public comments begin, correct?
Yep.
Motion to have electronic public comments open 24 hours from 5:30 to 5:30, and in-person public comments not received after public comment period begins.
Works for me.
Is that good, Ingrid?
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, the next discussion, use of facilities for funerals. Comments?
Are you asking for comments now, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So I didn't know what this was about. So I read both of the policies to see where, the issue is. And it was only when I got to the second policy that I think it's number 3. It has an asterisk beside it and it dealt with funerals. And so I sort of presume that the gist of this, the basis of this being a topic of discussion is whether or not we do funerals.
Correct.
Okay, so if that's the case, the two districts compared are after the three governors' schools, those are two of the richest districts out of the 85 that are in South Carolina. And so and they're big districts. The demographics are pretty doggone impressive. I think Fort Mill 2, which is Rock Hill 2, which is Fort Mill 2, which is Fort Mill, their PIP population is only 21%, I'm recalling from memory. So, and I used to have that as an area when I was stationed in South Carolina, and that is a very progressive area. Lots of institutions there that can accommodate funerals. To my knowledge, I'm not aware of funerals being held at any of our schools along the 278 corridor. I don't think that type of necessity has sort of come to fruition. And the thing that I learned recently, because a friend whose husband was looking for a place to hold her funeral and asked if I might be able to help. When I called some of the churches, including the one that I attend, that lady and her husband is not of that denomination. And to my shock, I was told that they don't do funerals for people who are not of that denomination. So when I look at where the preponderance of funerals, I think, actually occur, which are in the heritage area, there may not be the options to hold funerals, in a place that can hold a significant amount. So I'm leaning towards holding the funerals. However, I think when I first got on the board, there was some requirement that was violated by, I guess it was the funeral home, that I don't know whether they're not supposed to have the hearse near the church or the casket open or what it was, but they violated that. And I never heard any punitive action was taken, such as restricting that offender, say, for 5 years. So if the issue is, that people are violating and going against things that we require, then I think the answer is to really hold those violators accountable. And then I could see over a period of time, probably 5 years, to actually phase out the use of funeral, or 10 years if it becomes a burning issue at the board at that time. But otherwise, I think we have such cohesion in the full county at this point. I would hate to see it split because we still have a lot of work we want to do within the district.
Well,
So I stand down.
the reason this came up is because principal at one of the schools, she was upset that the family wanted to have a funeral at the school. Now, we have had, I can remember 3. One several years ago, it's been quite a while, we had a student funeral at Battery Creek. And then we had a teacher's funeral at Whale Branch. So she taught at Whale Branch Middle and Whale Branch High. And then we had this gentleman a few Saturdays ago. His wife was a teacher, and they had it at Whale Branch. And then the young lady that got shot, their family wanted to have the funeral at Whale Branch, and the principal said she was against it. And so then I spoke with Dr. Rodriguez about it. And he said that we cannot, if we had one and we tell somebody they can't have another one, then that's showing bad feelings. So that's the reason why this came up. Now, Ms. Boatwright, you have a comment?
Yeah, I think that this is the 3rd or 4th time I have had this issue brought up while on the board, which is surprising because it seems like a very niche sort of small issue. The way our AR currently reads is that private use of schools, including but not limited to weddings, family reunions, and baby bridal showers, are prohibited. Funerals will be considered on an individual basis, subject to the approval of the superintendent or her designee.
Right.
I think that's a problematic. I think that's a problem waiting to happen, to have it be sort of, I'm pretty sure it's not a power that Dr. Rodriguez wants. He would rather have a policy that either they're allowed or they're not allowed. Essentially, our AR says they're not allowed, but on occasion we can make an exception for a funeral. And I definitely understand that this is more of an issue north of Broad. But I think one of the things we have, I'm opposed to using schools for funerals. I think one of the reasons is funerals, again, if we're doing it on a case-by-case basis, there's a potential for a lot of friction. Funerals are very sensitive and a very sensitive time for people. And I think I don't think he wants to be in the position of, and I don't think we should put him in the position of saying yes to you, no to you, right? I think we should have a policy. If we were to have a policy that was no funerals or yes funerals, but the yes funeral, I mean, I guess the other thing that then comes up is if we were to say, all right, we're going to allow funerals. And again, I don't think it would be something that would come up except for like the kind of situations that Mr. Campbell has mentioned. So I don't think we'd be having a lot of funerals at the school. I think we need to be aware that a lot of violence occurs at funerals, that it can be very political funerals, that we don't allow any other kinds of private use of our schools, including like a family reunion. We do not, and I think what you're remembering, Mr. Dallas, is right as you came on, I think there was alcohol involved.
Okay.
And so I think the problem is funerals are quite commonly places where people things can get out of hand. They can become political. I think for a lot of people, it's uncomfortable to have a school used as a funeral, just in general. I don't know of any school districts that do. I can't find any that, and I haven't gone, school district by school district, but I think the two that were put in are not, I think it's the norm not to allow funerals and not to allow them. So I understand that there's a prior practice that you want to be, sensitive to, but I think we need to look at this as what's the best thing for the district. And I am concerned that if we were to move off the current policy we have and say, okay, we will allow funerals, I think we are putting ourselves in a position where we could open ourselves up for some other even more fracturing type of problems. So that's kind of my opinion on this. But it definitely is an issue that does not want to go away. It's something that comes up quite often.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, sir, may I question?
Go ahead.
How were these two districts chosen as the examples?
Me and Tina went to a meeting, South Carolina School Board Association meeting, and this came as Fort Mill had a presentation, and they were talking about facility use, and that's how this came up. The issue at the last one at Way Up Branch, principals were upset because there was some rules that there was going to be some shoot ups and all this stuff. So that's the reason why she was upset about that. And the superintendent, he spoke to the principal, and but they didn't have the funeral at the school; they had it at a church.
Okay.
What can I share? I know in the past practice of allowing funerals, they were not to have the casket open.
Right.
So in the instances where they were allowing funerals, they can have them, but the casket could not be open.
Right.
And I think one of the issues that happened was, I think at Ladies Island, that they opened the casket and that became an issue.
Oh, I didn't know they had the wedding.
Wherever Monica Whitaker's was. I can't.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think it was like, because she was a teacher
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So I know in the practice of having funerals, then you would say you can have them, but you could not have an open casket in the school.
So the two issues I'm sorry, Ms. Boatwright, do you want to, before I respond? Because
No, I'm listening.
the two issues that I'm hearing is one, the threat of violence. And that's very real, particularly where they violate any stated or written guidelines that they're given. And opening a casket can be extremely emotional. And that may be, since we had a prohibition against that, why we've had so few. So that's probably a good thing to have that as part of whatever. If guidelines and acceptance goes forward, to have some type of very firm restrictions with punitive responses in terms of prohibiting those people if they violate them for 5 years or 10 years, whatever, or permanently, that funeral home, so that there's that impetus to make sure they are complying with whatever our guidelines are. So the violence is one that is really, that calls into question use of our facilities. Do we allow our stadiums for use other than our own teams?
Yes.
Okay, so that becomes, because I think we've had some violent acts at our stadiums when they were not our teams, where there was gunfire. Am I correct on that, or?
The one I remember, and I don't mean to speak over Mr. Campbell, but the one that was the adult football league. No, we have rented out, like, for example, and I think you were there one time, our tennis courts, for example, at Hilton Head High. There are colleges that rent them, that come down and do, like, spring break type of thing from up north to get ready for the tennis season. So the one time I know that there was an issue was with the adult football league, and it wasn't violence. It was just, smoking, a little bit of drinking, dog on the field, that type of stuff. I don't think that there is violence at our school football games, just like I think there have been throughout time, as long as public schools have had it's a place where things can get a little out of hand. I don't know of a third party having violence at a football team, at least not in my recent memory.
Okay. Then one of the other things I saw in the agreements is that the other two districts required $1 million of insurance from the entity. And that would be a way to say, hey, here are the requirements, without saying you can't do it. And even if we say that is the interim between, just the interim policy, if we're going to phase it out, I would suggest an extended phase out period, so the community understands that due to violence and trying to protect them, that we're trying to take the safest route for all. And at this date, that service ends. So I'm just trying to think how to still, provide support where appropriate. And maybe the superintendent and superintendent only would have the authority to provide an exception for that in case it's a teacher or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So you suggest we just leave the policy as it is? And the reason the principal was very worried is because the week before the young lady's funeral, her grandmother's mobile home, which they was renovating, was shot up and was set on fire. And
Mrs. Lassard's grandmother?
Huh?
Are you saying?
No.
The student that was killed, it was her grandmother.
Her grandmother.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And that's why the principal was kind of concerned and about having the funeral there.
My personal opinion is that was a legitimate concern.
Yeah. So do you want to leave the policy the way it is?
We don't have a policy.
Well, not a policy, but
So we would need to develop a policy.
yeah.
We would need to make a policy, and if you're gonna make a policy, whatever terms that you wanna
Yeah.
put that you want to put in it. Because right now, we don't have anything either or, only the AR.
So when will really be available?
After court.
And we got what, another week after this one, right? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we consider this one and move it forward for the creation of a policy over a period of time.
Okay. All right.
So that, we consider, and when we bring it forward, if there's a way to solicit all the districts in South Carolina to ascertain and confirm they don't have a denial policy or they do, I think that strengthens our case so that we can sell it into the community that we're just being prudent with their health and safety, as well as, trying to be consistent. And then a phase out period, I also would suggest.
Okay, that's fine.
And I think one thing, the reason again that we have the Fort Mill is because, we have a lot of districts don't have very clear guidelines. And I
Right.
think, Mr. Campbell, your goal and Dr. Gwad's goal was to try and have some clearer guidelines on facility use, because there is a tremendous liability
Yep.
with that. And so I think that, like, I was just looking to see counties around us. Berkeley County it just basically has a fee schedule. And as I recall from that Fort Mill presentation, which is in board docs somewhere, they were growing concerned about what the liability would be for having and trying to craft a policy that would protect them. So I'm not sure. I'll definitely do some looking to see if there's any ones that specifically ban them or specifically allow them.
Tanya and Dr. Rodriguez had us look up, and Mr. Campbell asked, the districts that we couldn't find people who had a policy
No.
about facility use for funerals. So they don't have anything in written. Now, whether they do or not, but they don't have anything as a written policy saying they do or they don't.
And I think that, if I may, if providing some of the data about the search that's been done, that we scoured, statewide, and what we found, and also the fact that the two that I've seen so far have $1 million policies that are required. And I think that becomes a screening mechanism to sort of ensure that, we're protecting the school district by having the $1 million liability. And we also are trying to protect the citizens and the residents who, if they clear that hurdle and the policy approval policy stays, and if they clear that liability hurdle, then, we're trying to protect them as well by being more stringent. Because if there was violence and someone's grandmother was killed, it could very easily erupt at a funeral.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of if a lot of violence does occur at funerals. In fact, I think I read somewhere, I'll see if I can pull this data, when we were looking at some of the school shooting and security issues, that it's at funerals after the fact. So one other question I have is that I think would come up is, why do we make an exception for funerals? Because we actually have a policy banning private use, right? So I think that the question would be, why do we accept funerals out of that? Why is that a significant thing?
I think from where I've sort of seen in other situations, because ultimately it becomes a political decision.
Yeah.
If the community writ large in force mobilizes against us because we ban funerals, without having a real ironclad explanation, it becomes a vote at the elections. And
Right.
then if they win, that is, when a majority wins, we can see that they can do anything they want. And if they got a super majority, there's no sense of chance of overturning it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that very much. I just was wondering, in a general sense, why is family reunions different? You know what I mean? Like, I'm saying, like, culturally in the community where this might potentially be an issue. Because I can tell you on Hilton Head, if you said, hey, we're banning funerals, the response would be, we allow them. I mean, it's just not here. So if you're looking at areas where it might really cause you know, some people to be upset if we were, what is it about the funeral versus, because we do ban weddings, family reunions, any other private use, but we have made a carve out for funerals. And I was just wondering why that was something that people wanted to have at the school. Is it just because it's a big space, or I was just, I'm confused as to what and not in a
Yeah.
negative way,
Oh,
legitimately
no.
understand.
Yeah, Ms.
Um,
Boatwright, if I can share with many of the places I've lived in, funerals have a degree of finality, whereas those other types of social gatherings don't. A wedding is a continuation, it's a binding, right? A reunion, there are people that you expect to see them at the future reunion. At a funeral, the emotion is, I mean, it's like a hot cinder, it's ready to catch fire because there is that degree of finality. And I guess, to your concern, which is legitimate, what I'm looking at is how do we ease out rather than just go cold turkey? And the liability, I think, is a real honest one. And phasing it out with a set date and time allows the community to sort of get familiar with where this is going. So I agree with you. It is different, but the emotion is really unlike anything else that I've seen.
Never had the community request having a funeral. Like I mentioned before, we had one student at Battery Creek several years ago. And then we had a teacher that was in Whale Branch Middle School and Whale Branch High. And then the gentleman that his wife was a teacher at the middle school also. So those are the only three. And then when this young lady got shot, the parents requested that. Those are the only time. We haven't had anything before that on top.
Ms. Boatwright, I have a question. So you're saying we have a policy that don't allow them on the policy. Is that an AR or is that a policy?
Yeah, the use of facilities AR, which is OS 29.
Okay, so that's not our policy.
No.
That's
No,
just AR, right?
But I mean, the district has a policy. It's just interesting to me from not understanding why, why we ban private use, in general, and then B, why we accept out funerals. But that's neither here nor there. And it's certainly not policy related, so we can set that aside. But what are we bringing forward then to the board? Just leaving it as is, or we're just making a motion to see if the board wants us to look at this again? Because we've looked at this
Several
in
times.
operation several times.
I'm asking for a little bit more data.
Okay.
So that when we move forward, we can make an overwhelming, compelling case. One, as Mr. Campbell said, there have been very few instances. And those were situations where the superintendent, as I understand it on current policy, could have said yes. Yes, that's a tough call, but sometimes in certain positions, just being consistent is our defense mechanism. And the other three people, as I understand it, were teachers. So you could say no in that particular case because evidently that person was not a teacher. And so that would have been consistent. So I'm just asking that we spend a little bit more effort to, sort of scour what's out there and then come back. And again, I think ultimately we're going to have to get away from them. But let's make, I would want us to ensure that we're doing it in a way that we're explaining it to the community.
So then we don't necessarily need a motion, just sort of let's revisit this with more data would be the response or the report that we're looking into it, but we're in the process of gathering some more information.
Okay, that's fine.
And the data that you're looking for is you are looking for other districts. The data you're asking is to provide, like if we've looked at other districts, if they do, if they don't, the type of, when we did have them, was it student related, teacher related? What conditions were they under when the funerals were allowed? Was there something else in the data collection?
Primarily what I may be a way to make sure coverage is to send out a blanket letter to all the districts, and the school board association or the superintendent association could do it, or whomever, and asking specifically, and then to tally out of the 85 that are out there, how many responded, how many had yes and no's, and then what type of caveats did they have in terms of their execution. And then I think that's going to build a case that, you know what, we're just trying, again, to protect the community and be fair and consistent. Does that help, Ms. Cushingberry?
Yes, sir.
We would do that for the large districts and school board association. Okay.
And then to make sure people don't think we're trying to just kick the can continuously down the road, you know, we could say we bring it back to this committee if the chair so elects in a couple of months to give everybody time to respond and compile the data, and then come forward with a motion, either continue or cease and desist.
So you want to come back next meeting?
Schedule November.
November.
That
Okay.
I don't know if Ms. Boatwright's okay with that, but if she is, I am.
It's fine with me.
Okay. I think Ms. Boatwright may have signed off or got disconnected. I don't see her.
Who's coming in
She's
again?
coming back in now.
Okay.
So when will our next meeting? Okay.
Hold on a second. Ingrid, are you back?
Yeah, sorry, my computer just decided to reboot.
Be okay with us scheduling a meeting in November to
Yeah.
come back with data and stuff?
Yep.
Is there a date and time that works better for you or not?
You know, I mean, Monday, Wednesday afternoons are good. So do we need a motion on, you put the motion in, but we didn't vote on it, right, for the public comments?
I put the motion in and put that you all both agreed, so that
So
was
that's fine, that's fine. I wanted to make sure that if my computer dies,
yeah,
you guys didn't need.
That it was unanimous agreement.
Yeah.
right. And as far as this discussion, the discussion is that you would come back and meet again in November after collecting data from the other school districts, basically a survey asking them if they held funerals, yay or nay, and under what circumstances, and the data of the ones that we have, circumstances, teacher, student, their so forth, so forth.
Yep.
And also getting information from the School Boards Association.
Sounds good to me.
And I will, after looking at the November calendar, I will get back with you all to get a date that works for the three of you all. Is that fine?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you do the closing here?
I'll unlock that.
Okay.
Nothing else, this
I'm-
meeting is.
Because
Thank you.
We adjourn by unanimous consent?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
All right, thank you.